Okay, when you're ready, Samaila, you can start.
Thank you so much, Ma. I want to appreciate the 1 million teachers community. I want to appreciate especially you. We've had some discussion in regards to this session, and you were gracious enough to process our conversation and give me this opportunity. I want to quickly find out if my slide is on, if you can see the presentation slide.
Yes, I can see inquiry learning, POGIL, 1 million teachers, community of practice. Yes, I can see it.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So welcome everyone to this session. To give a brief background, if any of us has completed the Black Belt program, you would have come across POGIL at some point. So this should not be new to you. What we will be doing is providing a bit of more detail. When you go through what we had during the Black Belt program, you'll find that the details are a bit sketchy. I hope that we'll be able to converse about the individual items, either things that puzzled you or things that you feel you just want to share with someone else. So, like Hajia mentioned, my key interest is on the way we teach, and a key component of that is the pedagogy that we use. And for us to deliver the quality of education that our countries, I mean countries where 1 million teachers is operational, in order to deliver the quality of education that our countries need to transform our society into one where we are literally just consumers, not just of products, but of ideologies, but of approaches to the social challenges that we are facing, to one where we are producers, right? Producing our own products, producing our own ideologies, ideas across the spheres of our social life, that is across the political, economic, cultural scene. Then we need to be independent thinkers. We also need to be able to apply a scientific method-based approach to the issues and to also seize the opportunities that are in front of us. Sadly, in the past, we have focused a lot on direct transmission, where as students, we were passive learners, simply absorbing what our teachers who are in the position of authority, in our case, right, were telling us. And whatever things that were wrong with what they were teaching, right, we had no opportunity to be able to process it. We took it in verbatim, right? And that is why, as the world has changed and the knowledge that we are receiving through education systems here have not changed, what has happened is we don't have the tools anymore to address the challenges that we are facing. We don't have the tools to seize the opportunities that are arising for us. And that is why across board, in many of the countries where 1 million teachers are operational, we have serious crises. In order for the next generation not to continue in this crisis, we as teachers are in a position to intervene. Intervene in the sense of using the most effective pedagogy for empowering our students who are in our care, for whom we are responsible, to be able to deal with the challenges that we have failed to solve. And so it is a call to action for every one of us. Who is this session for? If you are finding it hard to transmit concepts that are a bit difficult to your students, then this session is for you. It is not your fault that students are not understanding some of the things that you are teaching. It is also not always your fault, right? That even though they are able to give you back what you gave them in the classroom during the assessment, in the next term, in the next session, they have no recollection of anything you have done in the class. And that is sad because it means that we have wasted effort. That students are able to pass our tests and able to pass our exams and not know what they are doing, but because they have memorized it, because they have learned it by rote, it is no credit to us that they are still able to go into the real world and none of the things that we have taught them in class is of any relevance. So this session is for every one of us that is looking to engage that student that is doing not so well, that is looking to engage every student in a way that they are not only able to pass those assessments that we place for them at the end of the term or at the end of the session or at the end of their journey in the elementary and secondary stages of education, right? But that they go out and then make all the difference in the communities they operate and in the organizations they work for and the organizations that they themselves build and in the political scene where they are making policies that are addressing the challenges that our societies or our nations face. So this session is for you if you're passionate about making that change and enabling that change. This session is also going to provide us with the elements that is necessary for POGIL. So it's entirely a framework. At the end of it, this framework that you would have will be sufficient for you to start tinkering with inquiry learning in the classroom. I know some of us already are operating at some level of inquiry learning in your classrooms. But what I would love is to look out for those things that have been challenges in terms of how you deliver inquiry learning in the classroom and see how any of these elements that we are discussing will be relevant in solving that. At the end of it, if you've not used inquiry learning, you will be in a position to start tinkering with it. But if you've used inquiry learning, you're able to deliver, you're able to raise the level of your pedagogy in the classroom a notch. And that could make all the difference. So what are we going to cover in this session? We're starting off with the definition of POGIL. And secondly, we are going to find out what makes POGIL so special. Now, POGIL is one branch of inquiry learning. there are several other approaches to inquiry learning. So we are going to try to illustrate how this framework is probably better than most of what you are using because of what it inculcates in the approach. And lastly, you would have enough information to start implementing it in the classroom. I just want to be clear that there are many types of framework when it comes to learning. And no framework is particularly superior to another. It is usually a matter of context. Direct transmission has its place. So does structured inquiry. So does open inquiry. Whether you're using a problem-based approach in your classroom or a subject-based approach, or you're entirely learner-focused, it all depends on the context. So if this is so, right, we are not saying this is something you are going back to the classroom to replicate in its exact form. But as the persons that are trying to build thinking classrooms, it is pertinent for us to demonstrate that we ourselves as teachers are capable of thinking, that we are capable of critical thinking, of problem solving thinking, of being creative in our thinking. Why is this relevant? I'm saying take what we are learning today and adopt it for your context. If there is a problem and you feel a certain part is relevant, adopt it. And other parts are not relevant, don't adopt it.
Hello,
I hope
sir.
this is
Samaila.
not controversial. Yes, thank you.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Sorry.
I can hear you. Okay, so am I still audible to everyone?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. So let's kick off, right? Please, in the chat box, I would love you to provide the answer to this question. What is inquiry learning? So I will speak while you put in the answer because we do not have so much time, but I will be checking what we will be sharing in our chat and make reference to that. So this question is important because I checked the dictionary, so online dictionary, Google, some of us use Bing or Ask Jeeves. And for every individual definition of inquiry learning, there is a different definition. So every source I checked has its own definition. And that taught me one thing, right? And that thing is also relevant to us here. And that is our definitions do not have to be the same. So I'm loving these answers because I have some ideas or feedback around them. So it's simply learning by doing, and it is process-oriented inquiry learning. It is challenging learners to find solutions to problems and learning in the process. So it will be interesting because it is learning by asking questions intuitively. Fantastic, right? Inquiry learning is a kind of research learning. Okay, right? So from what I'm already seeing, there are some similarities and some differences in all the responses that I'm seeing. Kingsley says it is learning by asking questions. Okay. Yeah, so some of us are maybe closer to the principles of POGIL than others. Okay, even though for this session, right, we are focused on POGIL, but if we are going to look at the definition of POGIL at the moment, right, it says it is process-oriented guided inquiry learning, right? So I know someone put that, right? Process-oriented inquiry learning. So I'm just going to use the definitions that I'm seeing in the chat to sort of distinguish the definition that you're looking at on the slide in front of us. So learning by doing, that is true. That's part of POGIL. Process-oriented inquiry learning, that is true. That's from Yekini. However, there is also the point that what I asked was, what was inquiry learning? And if the answer is process-oriented inquiry learning, then it's more of an adjective, right? Because you're still referencing the term that I want to explain. But the key point for me here is, it is true that even in every form of inquiry learning, there is some level of process orientation, but it is not emphasized. And also, in the case of POGIL, it is guided, and we have some other forms of inquiry learning. So while POGIL is guided, we also have open inquiry, which is not guided. We also have structured inquiry, which is heavily guided to the point that it is structured, and so it's no more considered guided, right? So thank you, Yekini. It is challenging learners to find solutions to problems and learning in the process. Yes, right? However, what if what we are trying to do is not find a solution to a problem, right? But simply get the participants to construct an understanding of a fact, right? We just want them to better understand a fact. So this is more of, this definition being sent is a subset of inquiry learning, right? So what I'm hoping is that we are putting together we are looking at everybody's definition. Okay, I'm going to make a point for that. Yes, this is classical, Vanessa. It is about asking questions, right? Fantastic. That is like a key component. That is the beginning of an inquiry process. And then we have other components that complement it and make it a system. And then inquiry learning is kind of a research learning. Remember, I like that, right? Then learning by asking questions. Kingsley, you have been very fundamental. So thank you so much for these definitions. So let's go to what I have here on screen, right? This definition is something that I put together from my understanding of POGIL based on my review and reflection of the process. And I want us not to cram or memorize this definition. It is pointless, especially because we are adult teachers and nobody is going to be asking us to define, right? However, understanding a concept means understanding the essential characteristics of whatever we are reviewing, whether it is tangible, like a car, or intangible, so like an idea like democracy. To be clear, for us, it is not important for us to memorize definitions. It is important for us to understand the essential characteristics of whatever is the subject matter. Now, the understanding of the essential characteristics of a subject matter is what is referred to as concept. So if we go back to the domain of learning and check what is a concept is simply the essential characteristics of a subject matter. So whatever it is that is under consideration. So POGIL is a concept in this case. And what are the essential characteristics of POGIL? So in the definition, it says students work in teams. Note that. It says on activities specially designed. Note that. So there are like 5 characteristics I want us to take from this definition. If we have these 5 characteristics in mind, we have a clear understanding of or we have a clear definition of the concept. So I've mentioned 2, working in teams, activities that are specially designed. The third, guide them. So guidance is the third characteristic I want us to remember. Construct their own understanding of key concept. Now, this is the fundamental characteristic of POGIL because it is the expected outcome. If we do everything else, and at the end of the day, our students do not construct their own understanding, emphasis of whatever concept we are exploring or teaching in class, we have failed. And the last and 5th is develop important process skills. So here, it does not say use important process skills. It says develop important process skills. So I'm going to just say here that we expect 2 outcomes from POGIL. One is the construction of understanding. That is a personalization of the subject matter, of the understanding of the subject matter. So I'm not repeating what my teacher said, which is one of the reasons why many of us that are here didn't do so well in our tertiary, because when a lecturer comes to class and expects that in the exams you're supposed to repeat verbatim what they said in class and you do that, you fail. That is sad, right? Because it means you are not allowed to construct your understanding of the concept. But we are a new breed of educators. We want our students to apply whatever it is that we are teaching them in the context of their world. Then the second outcome is development of process skills. So while we are teaching cognitive skills or passing on cognitive knowledge, right? We're also expecting that our students are building affective abilities, which are things like communication, critical thinking, and problem solving. This is a dilemma because within the current curriculum and scheme of work and the 40-minute periods that many of us are faced with, we might not see immediately how we're able to provide both the cognitive content that our students need and also ensure that they are building those affective abilities like problem solving skill and critical thinking. But I can assure you that this is a framework and we can adapt it, modify it for whatever the constraints we face in the classroom. That it just calls on us to be more imaginative and to be more critical in our thinking and more focused on the opportunities to solve the problem, and we can do it. So I'm going to do a bit of short dive into the more of theoretical framework under which POGIL is based. So there are two components of POGIL that are theoretically based. So when I say theoretically based, it means that there are certain theories that underpin POGIL. The first is the idea of constructivism. This is dated back to the late 19th century and early 20th century. And some of us that are more familiar with people like POGIL, right? It's a French name, so pardon me. And I think Russian or Slav name, Vygotsky, right? So these are like the forerunners in developing the theory of constructivism that are today being used in inquiry learning and particularly in POGIL. Now, the second is the work of David Combs, right? And that is experiential learning. Okay, but for the purpose of this session, we are going to focus on the work of constructivism, right? So constructivism is simply the idea that people construct their understanding of a situation through engagement with their environment, right? And so it is basically saying that learning is active. It involves doing, right? I think like Scholastica mentioned. And it's doing, not always physical doing, but it could be a thought experiment. So in a thought experiment, you are mentally doing, but primarily there has to be activity, whether the activity is physical or cognitive. And so constructivists, right, believe that learning is active. A notch further is the idea that learning is social. And that is, while we engage with our environment, learning is not complete until we are able to exchange our perception of the real world with others. Because we as humans are what you would call fallible, our perspective is partial. It is never ever full, right? It is when we have multiple perspectives come together that we are able to arrive at an approximate representation of reality. That is why knowledge is so fluid. Even science itself is fluid. I know in the past, we used to be told, oh, you should be taking vitamin C, right? But then in more recent research, they say no, taking vitamin C at some point has adverse effects. It becomes counterproductive. They used to say, oh, vitamin C you get vitamin C primarily from oranges, right? But then recent research is showing that it is not the primary source, right? So it is because you have multiple people working on it. And that is also why if maybe you're an economist, right? You'll find that there are multiple theories for solving economic challenges. And that is why today you have a government that comes and says, oh, we'll have more of a liberal approach. And another one comes and says, no, we are going to have more of a socialist approach or a communal or communist approach. And it's even the same thing in the sciences. Every day, scientists are engaged in debates. What are they trying to do? Right? Everybody has their own opinion based on their own research, right? And then they're trying to see, can we marry our ideas and come to a more accurate representation of reality? And so what is happening in the real world is what we expect also to be happening in the classroom. So learning is an active and a social process. And then based on this also, the Vygotsky, Dasliu made an addition to the idea of learning being social. And that is the idea of zone of proximal development. That people learn when you provide them with a question that forces them to up their level of thinking. So it forces them to break the routine and feel lost and see a void in their understanding and then seek support to fill that void. And that support could simply be doing something like going on Google to check, right? Or going on YouTube to check a YouTube video. But then when you go on Google or YouTube, what you're going is to check the work of somebody more knowledgeable has put online. And also in the classroom, that is what happens when you pair a student that is struggling with understanding of a particular concept with a student that has shown mastery of understanding of that concept. So it recommends that learning happens in a situation where there is always someone who is a step ahead to provide that scaffolding or that bridge to get the learner from a low level of understanding of a particular concept to a higher level. So basically, if you are going to go away with anything from this slide, it is simply that learning should be social and should be active. What are the characteristics of a POGIL classroom? One, self-managed teams. So it falls back to the idea of you have to make sure that it is organized. So when we say inquiry, it's not people going through random rabbit holes. It's not students chasing after any idea that comes to mind. So that's why it is important that we provide constraints. The first form of constraint is that the teams are self-managed. So within the teams, even though it's a group of people, we have to provide structure. Every person in that group has a role, and that role is makes it complete. So everybody has a role, and everybody playing their role makes the group self-managed. Secondly, we talk of guided inquiry. It still means people are not going down random rabbit holes. Our students are being guided, they are being constrained, but not by some form of rule, right? and we feel we have to enforce the rule? No. But we are providing guidance through questions. And that's the beautiful part of this, right? How we are going to go, I'm going to raise that up again. So if you are able to make sure that they are guided, it means that they will be arriving at the intended learning objective that is set out in the lesson or the curriculum. So what's the point of going to a class and the class is engaging, but then your curriculum or your lesson plan learning objectives are not met? There is room for that. That is open inquiry, but not within the framework of today's education system in many African countries from which many of us are based. So we have to spur the use of inquiry only to the extent that it is meeting the learning objectives as set out in the lesson plans and in the curriculum that is the statutory requirement. And then process skills. So just take a second to go over the 3 characteristics of POGIL again, and then I'll move on to the next slide. So at this point, I have a question. So you put it in your chat box. Some of us that are familiar with inquiry learning, you'll be able to have a good answer to this, but then your answers will help everyone. So sorry for the error, but what are guided questions? Guided questions are used in guiding students through an exploration to construct understanding, but it is deliberately like that. It's not helpful for us. So please, in the chat box, just put in what you think guided questions are. Sorry, is it true that we are only seeing the first slide still? Or is it for some participants?
Well, you've only just changed it now, but for the past 40 minutes, it was just the same slide.
Wow. Okay, that is fine. We'll have the slides available to everyone if that's okay. So I think it's a issue, a technical issue, not very sure why that was the case. Okay, so please, based on what you discussed so far, what would you say are guided questions? Sorry, based on your own experience. Okay, so basically I won't be answering this question. We'll be going on until I see what you are typing. I know some of us must be typing at the moment. So I'll also be checking that we are seeing the correct slides. Are we seeing the next slide here?
Yes, how is POGIL activity structured? How is a POGIL
Okay,
activity structured?
okay. Thank you so much. I'm not really sure why we had the issue with the slides, because the slides are very important. They contain important information. So let's talk about how POGIL activity are structured. They are structured based on the learning cycle. The learning cycle is similar to what we call scientific method. So when you design an activity, the first aspect of the activity involves exploring the phenomena. The second, develop a concept from the phenomena. So what is the pattern that the students recognize in that phenomena? The phenomena might be a story. So if you're teaching social studies, instead of teaching and labeling family tree, right, you tell a story of a wedding and how two couples met and the introduction process, maybe based on the culture, and then what happens during the wedding, right? Who is greeted, who is not greeted, and then after the wedding, who comes to the house to greet, right? And then maybe they have a child. What is the relationship of that child to the rest of the members of the family? You can tell all that within the story, right? And by the time you tell that story, your student first has engagement with the content, but also the student is able to build the relationship map or the social graph within that story. And so without necessarily designing a diagrammatical family tree, the student is always able to remember from that social point, from a more emotional, cognitive point of view, what a family looks like based on their story. And because people hardly forget stories as much as they do mere facts presented as in data form, right? You find that it's more intuitive for the student. They look at the phenomena, which is the story you provided, and then they are able to define the patterns. And once they are able to define the patterns, it means that they have some level of understanding of the phenomena, which is the family tree. And then you take them to the point and say, can you construct other trees that you see in society, right? And then your student says, oh, there is this idea that in society, you usually have structures or hierarchies, or what for this case, structures, right? And even in the school, we have structures. And that is the third phase where they apply the concept learned to their to other scenarios. So they say in the family we have this structure, but here in school, I noticed that we have a structure, right? Because we have the head teacher, and we notice that the head teacher is able to call others for meeting, and by the way they see, by the way they do things, the head teacher is always speaking to the head of academy, is always speaking to the rather than always speaking to the teachers directly. And then we notice that in certain levels, we have form masters, right? So even though we have a teacher for this, or like we have separate teachers coming and teach us, but we have one that is resident, we have one that seems to be in charge of. So you now have them building the organizational chart of the school. So they have been able to take an understanding of how trees work, like or how relationships work, they take and understand and then apply it to other scenarios. So your student has like a comprehensive idea of relationships and so you have made a massive step, you have taken a massive step in their understanding of the sociology around relationships. And that is a massive step in terms of what you're teaching them or reaching your goals in social studies. This kind of approach is quite different from just the mechanical idea of having students remember what if a family tree looks like. I don't know if this is clear to us, but let me give you another quick example. Right, so a teacher is struggling with students making pronunciations or pupils making pronunciation, right? Because the accent so if you look at it, maybe it's because the accent is British, but I am a Nigerian, right? And my intonation is not British. So having me mimic the British intonation might be problematic, and it will always look like I'm struggling with it. But let us take this learning cycle approach where we have a phenomenon, and that is pronunciation and correct pronunciation. What do? We take the British accent, a Hausa accent, Ibira accent, Yoruba accent, and play the same word to the people. Now, instead of the people trying to mimic the British accent, by hearing this different accent pronounce the same word, they're able to derive the pattern that is required to be able to successfully pronounce that word. And so you've gotten them from exploring the phenomena, right, where you presented all these stimulative materials to them. They listen to it, and then they derive the concept or an understanding of how to make pronunciation. And then they are able to make correct pronunciation, right? Because they notice that, oh, different people pronounce it differently. I can pronounce it differently as long as I'm able to enunciate particular stress marks in my pronunciation. So it applies in other concepts. Like I want to teach about multiplication, right? And then I bring two data points where I show people a bank account and show them how, that's my students, how it rises to the top, right? So that's what we say concave, right? So why is it not linear? Why does it inflect and go up suddenly, right? So I'm introducing them to the idea of multiplication or to the idea of coefficient. And so what you would now have is, once you present one, and then you're saying one is exponential, and then you now say, okay, I kept the same money in my house, and what happened to it? It was linear, right? So it was, maybe I'm putting the same amount of money regularly, it was rising, but at a linear trend, while the other trend is exponential, that is, it goes up quickly, or what might be called a hockey stick. And then the students, because you graphically represented that, they're able to say, oh, so this is the difference between arithmetic progression and exponential progression, right? And then why was it like that? We did not explore and understand the concept behind compounding. And then they now say, where else can we apply this concept, right? And then a student says, wait, Nigeria's population was 10 million in 1900, it was 20 million in 1950, and then it became 150 million in 2000, and then already it's in 2020 it's already 200 million plus. Oh, so Nigeria's population is also rising exponentially. So population is also another space where we can have arithmetic progression. So the student takes their understanding of a concept that is being taught in an original context, which is in the context of how bank accounts work, and then derive the concept and then apply it to other things such as demographic and or population rise. So if any student is able to transfer understanding from one context to another, that is, they transfer understanding to performance, right? That is the best evidence that learning has taken place. It is a better evidence than them writing a quiz, a test, or an examination. So they are able to take the concepts that they are learning in class and look for other real-world applications. And that is the objective of of POGIL. And then we have to be sure that our activities are designed to allow this to take place. So quickly, we talk of process skills. Process skills are important because they allow for collaboration within the groups. They allow for inquiry to take place. They allow for students to come to a superior understanding of knowledge versus case that would happen in direct transmission. So I won't dwell so much on the process skills, right? But we have to, I will just go quickly over the issue of management, which might be something that many of us have not seen before in information processing. Management is how the teams manage themselves. So if they're able to manage themselves well, they are already, what we are having is students already building leadership skills. And then information process is the ability to simply think logically, to connect the dots correctly. Because many of us are engaged in more of intuitive and thinking, and that could end up being random, leading us to not being able to identify and provide the right solution for a problem. But through implementation of POGIL, where you're able as a teacher to identify the points at which each of these skills would be needed during the activity, and then it's included in your lesson plan, and you make sure that at that point you go among the groups, right, and make sure that they are using that particular skill. And if you do this once, it's not enough, right? It is a continuous process. That's why we talk about developing the process skills. So there are two components when you're designing a lesson plan, right? One is the idea that it has to be structured around the learning cycle. And then the second is the idea that it has to use the process skills. Okay. So if you are looking at this, so this is the last part of what we'll be doing today. Why POGIL matters. So I just love us to if we are looking at this, to just put in the chat box what we are looking at. Or Hajia, could we unmute the mic so they can just state what they are looking at?
They can unmute each other.
Okay,
Exactly. Exactly. They can unmute themselves.
Okay, so please, I would love to hear someone say what they are looking at.
An X, a target or something like it. Looks like a target.
Okay, so
Hello?
we're looking at, yeah, so the slide is why POGIL matters. Is that the slide on the screen? Hello? Okay, so I'm not getting any feedback. I just want someone to tell me what impression they are getting from the picture in the screen. I know someone mentioned it looks like a target, so that's why I wanted to confirm if we are looking at the same thing. Okay, so I don't want us to waste so much time, right? So what we have here is a case of disengagement where the teacher, while trying her best, right, is addressing an issue or covering a subject that our students are finding a bit difficult to follow. Yes, so thank you so much for the answer in the chat, right? It says the teacher is not carrying the students along. The teacher is asking question, right? Yes, the teacher is speaking. That's why we have that. But students are not interested. So if we look at what is actually in that chat or comment, right, it looks like it is something that is difficult, right? So I have also here that learners are disconnected from the lesson, and that is true. And to be fair, it is not always the teacher's fault, especially when we have the kind of pressure of time, of the need to cover whatever the curriculum is or the lesson plan is for that day or for that session, right? So that is why we feel POGIL can come in to move some of that burden, especially when you are teaching concepts that are complex. So when you have teachers, sorry about the noise. So when you have teachers that are constrained by time, right, by resources, POGIL offers a good way to move some of the process of trying to understand to the students themselves. So POGIL allows for two things. One is mastery of the concept because it tends to be activity-based, which means there is a lot more engagement than if the teacher was standing in front of the board. And then it also allows for that social interaction, where it is not just the teacher trying to get the students to understand, but it is also the students among themselves trying to help each other to understand. So in that way, right, there is sufficient research based on POGIL that supports that students that undergo POGIL have a higher level of mastery. And it's just intuitive to us as well that if I do something, right, and then I have people that will support me in doing it, and I also have the guidance that I need in doing it, I'll probably just do it better than somebody standing at one point talking to me, and then I have to either try to conceptualize it in a short period of time or try to give out or try to memorize it. And then it also helps in building of the process skills that we have mentioned, right? So that we have students that once they are out of the school system, right, are equipped both with fundamental knowledge or robust understanding of what they need, right? But also they've developed those affective skills for them to succeed in whatever space or in applying the knowledge that they have built. So I've asked also what guided inquiry is, and I thank you for the answers on that, on the guided questions, I mean, right? So the question that the structure will enable the learners to figure out the answer, not necessarily give the answer, right? So that is an excellent response. I appreciate that. And then guided questions are questions the teacher asks to encourage learners to make meaning out of the information that they have and construct their own solution. Yes. So both these answers are very much on point. And just in addition, the guided questions are usually about 5, that is what is recommended, right? But then each of the question has their own rule. The first group of question is supposed to activate prior knowledge and make connection to what is being taught. Then the questions in the middle are supposed to help the students disentangle whatever phenomena they are looking at to understand the concept or the principle or the cause-effect relationship, right? And then the last or group of question or last question is to help students figure out where or how to apply that in other contexts. So at this moment, I know we don't have time. I don't know if there are any questions that we can answer. So Hajia, let me know how much time we have for the questions. If we don't have questions, these slides would be available through Hajia. And so I have a question here. So please just let me know if my time is, if we are shutting down. But I have a question here that says, why is POGIL is necessary to have good interaction between teacher and the pupils? Why? So I believe the question is, why is POGIL necessary to have a good interaction between the teacher and the pupils? So let me provide a quick answer to that. Under POGIL, under direct transmission, the teacher usually asks the questions, and then the students answer the question. But the teacher usually asks questions either to gauge prior understanding or prior knowledge, to gauge prior knowledge, or to confirm that what they have tried to transmit has been assimilated, right? POGIL does something different. It also provides students the opportunity to come up with questions. They come up with questions that they ask themselves, but they also come up with questions that they throw back at the teacher. So if you always find it hard that after your session, your students don't ask you questions and you're fearful it's because they don't understand, then maybe you should try this active and social approach to a lesson and see how many questions come up. Because in the course, your students will definitely get stuck and then they will throw back questions at you. And especially when you are exploring a phenomena, you find that they would ask you questions you were not prepared for. And then your role suddenly changes from that of an authority figure who knows everything to somebody that can work in partnership with your students to uncover the answer. So you say, wow, can we check a textbook? Can we check the library? Can I go online now and let us check the answer of this, right? Or can I just share what I think and then let us talk and see if we can come up with a better solution. So in that way, POGIL allows far better engagement because instead of standing in front of the classroom where psychologically the students are looking at you as an authority figure, what you are doing is moving around and entering into the groups, gauging where they are in terms of that, taking their questions, asking them questions, right? They will be asking you for things, they will be asking you for things you didn't prepare for. And so you are now together trying to figure out where do we get the information we need for this, right? So do you have any further questions? Okay, so at this moment, like I said, every other thing that is here on the slide are things that you can put together. Just to round up, I would like to tell you that POGIL also can be accessed very successfully, because I'm sure some of you might be thinking, how can we access this? So thank you so much for your time. I will definitely hand back the mic now to Hajia.
Okay, thank you very much, Samaila. Thank you for giving us your time and sharing your knowledge with us. I think I would have liked to see you demonstrate what you were talking about, because you spoke about all these wonderful ideas of delivery and questioning. I would have liked you to have given us a practical example of that and pretend that we are your students and engage us more with letting us ask questions and doing that. I think we all, like you said, it's one of the modules in the 1 Million Teachers program. So we all have a bit of knowledge about it. And like you said, if we're supposed to go by the constructivism theory, then we are not empty vessels. We all have some knowledge that you can build on. And maybe in your next session, we would see more hands-on experiential learning. As you said, it's a two-session program. So we're going to continue next week as well. But you've given us an insight to what POGIL is. Maybe the next session will be a more example of how to see POGIL in action.
Yes, thank you so much for that. That is the point. In fact, the time is, so since we have the second session, we can devote that, but we would have the slides, right? And then that will give us a good basis as well for the second session that is going to be more of experiential. Yes, we can do that. Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right. So we look forward to the next session, same time next week, next Thursday. Sorry again that I got the time mixed up. So 5 p.m. Nigeria time is actually 4 p.m. UK. So when I'm scheduling my Zoom meeting, I'll make sure it is 4 p.m. UK, 5 p.m. Nigeria time. Or if people prefer this time, 6 to 7, whichever time is preferable to you, you can let me know.
We prefer this time, Mama.
Okay, all right. Okay, fine. If majority prefers 6 to 7, then 6 to 7 it will be. Okay, thank you for joining our session. I hope you have learned a lot, and we will continue next week. Thank you once again, Mr. Samaila Goje, for your time. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you. Okay, somebody is saying 5 to 6. Some are saying 5 to 6. Okay, we will see which one is more popular. We can't please everybody. We can't please everybody.
Mama.
It used to be 5 to 6, but if we prepare 6 to 7, we'll see. I'll let you know in the WhatsApp group. Okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to end the recording now. Stop recording.